Ingest tab under Pipeline Overview. So if we go here under Pipeline Overview and you expand it, you'll be able to find the tab. So here is where you will manage all of your data sources, your connections, and this is how you'll bring data into Dalgo. And over here, you'll see that there are three tabs: connections, sources, and your warehouse. So Dalgo itself does not store any of your data. So you'll have to set up a warehouse of your own. And if you've already gone through our consulting process and set up, then your warehouse should be set up for you already. You can edit the details, delete the warehouse if you want to from this tab, and see the details of the warehouse that you're connected to and where your data will be ingested to. So in the sources tab, here is where you will set up the actual sources that your data will be pulled from. The actual pulling of the data is configured in the connections tab. So now let's take a look at how to set up a new source. You'd click on the new source button over here and you can select source type. So Dalgo already has several connectors built and ready to use from several different Google sources like Comcare, Google Sheets, several APIs, DynamoDB, Salesforce, etc. So you can search for your connector. So for example, suppose I want to ingest a Google Sheet, I can search for it and find a source. So now depending on which particular source type you pick, you will be prompted for different connection details. Now you can fill those up, and once you fill them up, click on Save Changes and Test. So once that happens, if all of your authentication details are correctly put in, then what will end up happening is you'll see a new source created like this one. Any of these are all new sources that we've created. As you can see, many of them are Google Sheets, some of them are MongoDB, etc. So once a source has been created, only then can a connection be created as well. And you do that by going to New Connection. And then you can select the source that you've selected, that you've created already. And now from that source, what you will see are different streams. So the streams basically indicate maybe different tables or different tabs that might be in Google Sheets, for example, different workspaces or forms you might have in Comcare. So they basically just indicate different pieces of data coming from your source, and you can decide which one of them you want to ingest and which ones you don't. So in this example, I can decide that maybe, hey, I want to get demographics from my YouTube channel. I want to get information on playback locations, but I don't need anything else. And in that case, I can leave them unselected. And you can also pick how you want to import them. So you can do an append, which means that the data will get added each time a sync is run. An overwrite, which means that all of the data will be overwritten every time a sync is done. And an append dedupe means that the data gets appended, but if there are duplicates in the new data being pulled, then those won't be put in. It deduplicates them. The cursor field will be automatically selected, so that just indicates the field by which Dalgo keeps track of whether or not this data is a duplicate or it's a new field of data. And once you select all of these fields, you can just click connect. You have to put in the name, of course. And if you do that, then it starts creating your new connection for you. And let's just wait a minute for that to happen. And the connection has been created. So you'll see it shows you the source and the destination of the connection you've created, and you can start a sync. Now, once a sync has been started, then it'll take some time to run. It gets queued and then it gets run. So at the end of the sync, what you can expect to see is if you go to your warehouse, you should find the tables in the schema you selected while creating the connection, and you'll then be able to move on to the transform phase and start using them. Now, there are a few more things you can do here on the connections page. You can edit your connection. Suppose I want to change the destination schema I'm putting the connection into. Here's where I'd do it. So the schema just refers to sort of the folder in your database where all these tables will be saved. You can also refresh schema. So if there have been any schema changes in your source, for example, in a Google Sheet, you've renamed your tabs or renamed your columns, you can refresh the schema and run it over here. You can delete the connection and you can also clear it, which means that any data that's been pulled in from that connection previously will now be removed and you can start fresh. Another interesting thing that you can do here on the connections tab is if there have been cases of things like schema changes at your source that you haven't already dealt with, you will see them come up over here. So, pending actions. So, if there's anything that could cause errors in your pipeline, you'll see warnings over here come up like schema changes. Over here on the screen, you can approve them or you can fix the problems that you're seeing on screen at the source. So, let's give it a second to come up. And you'll see over here that two columns from the Google Sheet have been removed. So you can approve them or cancel out of them. So when you approve them, what happens is that the connector will no longer try to pull those two columns. And because if you don't approve these changes and you just let them sit, it might lead to syncs failing later down the line, like this one. Now, if you have a sync that has failed, you can click on View History. And once you come here, you'll see all of the syncs that have been tried and failed. And there seems to be an issue with the way this connector itself is configured, which is why these syncs are failing. So you'll be able to click on logs, which will show you the actual error logs. But for most people, those are difficult to read. It's difficult to understand why the problem is happening. So if you just click on AI summary, we'll have an LLM summarize the error for you in a way that will be understandable, and then you can go ahead and fix that issue. So that's a brief overview of the Ingest tab, and I hope you have a better understanding of how you can set up your data sources and your connections